Welcome up! Today I'm deconstructing the Israeli and Palestinian conflict that has been present in the news for more than 14 days now. In doing this, I would like to get rid of the ideological rhetoric that conflict often brings, and this one in particular. We're not discussing 60 years of war, we're discussing what has happened in these weeks and what happened last year. And so, for starters, the conflict is not between Israel and Palestine, but between Israel, a well-armed and equipped state, and Hamas, a terrorist organization. Hamas is an acronym for the Islamic Resistance Movement. Why can I say that a self-proclaimed Islamic resistance movement aiming to destabilize Israel and liberate Palestine is a terrorist organization? Because it kills military personnel as well as civilians, and because of the means it uses. Yet Newsweek found that in the past week, Israel has killed many more civilians than Hamas has killed between 2000 and 2020. Israel is a state and should handle the situation much better than a terrorist organization. I believe this is an uncontroversial statement. A state should be better than a terrorist organization. Yet in these days, Israel has been firing rockets, killing targets along with many civilians. These are the names of the 34 minors killed by Israel up to the 14th of May. This is already telling, but many more died. There is a clear power difference between Israel and Hamas, and this difference produces an almost unilateral death toll. The UN has called for an investigation on these war crimes, soon after declaring that the conflict so far has displaced 52,000 Palestinians. Yet violence does not erupt out of the blue. Hamas attacks are a projection of hate and despair caused by continuous and systematic violations of human rights. In 2020, Amnesty International was writing this: Israel continued to impose institutionalized discrimination against Palestinians living under its rule in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, OPT. It displaced hundreds of Palestinians in Israel and the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, as a result of home demolitions and imposition of other coercive measures. Israeli forces continued to use excessive force during law enforcement activities in Israel and the OPT. Israeli forces killed 31 Palestinians, including 9 children in the OPT. Many were unlawfully killed while posing no imminent threat to life. Israel maintained its illegal blockade on the Gaza Strip, subjecting its residents to collective punishment and deepening the humanitarian crisis there. It also continued to restrict freedom of movement of Palestinians in the OPT through checkpoints and roadblocks. The Israeli authorities arbitrarily detained in Israel thousands of Palestinians from the OPT, holding hundreds in administrative detention without charge or trial. Torture and other ill treatment of detainees, including children, were committed with impunity. The authorities used a range of measures to target human rights defenders, journalists, and others who criticize Israel's continuing occupation of the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and the Syrian Golan Heights. Violence against women persisted, especially against Palestinian citizens of Israel. The authorities denied asylum seekers access to a fair or prompt refugee status determination process. Conscientious objectors to military service were imprisoned. If you follow the news in your country, you might have heard that some commentators referred to the situation of Palestinians in Israel as apartheid. Others seem to get offended when they hear the term apartheid. So let's look at the definition of apartheid. Britannica says that apartheid is a term that comes from Afrikaans and means apartness. Policy that governed relations between South Africa's white minority and non-white majority, and sanctioned racial segregation and political and economic discrimination against non-whites, of course. The implementation of apartheid, often called separate development, since the 1960s, was made possible through the Population Registration Act of 1950, which classified all South Africans as either Bantu, all black Africans, colored, those of mixed race, or white. A fourth category, Asian, so Indian and Pakistani, was later added. Is it extreme to call Israel an apartheid state? Well, according to Human Rights Watch, not at all. After their report found continuous and systematic violations of the rights of Palestinians, they concluded that The Israeli government has demonstrated an intent to maintain the domination of Jewish Israelis over Palestinians across Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. In the OPT, including East Jerusalem, that intent has been coupled with systematic oppression of Palestinians and inhumane acts committed against them. When these three elements occur together, they amount to the crime of apartheid. Israeli officials have also committed the crime against humanity of persecution. This finding is based on the discriminatory intent behind Israel's treatment of Palestinians and the grave abuses carried out in the OPT that include the widespread confiscation of privately owned land, the effective prohibition on building or living in many areas, the mass denial of residency rights, and sweeping decades-long restrictions on the freedom of movement and basic civil rights. Such policies and practices intentionally and severely deprive millions of Palestinians of key fundamental rights, including to residency, private property, and access to land, services, and resources, on a widespread and systematic basis by virtue of their identity as Palestinians. A few days ago, it was announced the ceasefire. While this has stopped the killings, it is unlikely that human rights violations will stop. What Israel has shown is the willingness to pursue a policy of ethnic cleansing. When you look at the things this way, do you think that the topic is really so controversial and difficult to discuss? I'm Understanding Politics. Thank you for watching.